Five Nights at Freddy's, guys. Freddy's. Freddy. Freddy. You know, the guy who attacks you in your nightmares. This is Adam Lowen with unwolfmelightox. If you're not up to speed with what this is, folks, fans of the 4 Five Nights at Freddy's games are contributing to a YouTube channel arms race to uncover the backstory and lore of the Five Nights at Freddy's, or FNAF, games. At the forefront of this search is Game Theory and its host, MattPat. And where we are at right now, MattPat has just posted a video with the shocking, wait, not shocking at all theory, wait for it, it's all just a dream. And damn it, that video pissed me off, because I was just about to make that video myself, and yes, I too was shocked and impressed with myself when I thought I had the unique, unprecedented theory that yes, it was the most obvious answer you could possibly come up with. So, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I would suggest you play the FNAF games and watch the game theory videos. I personally find it a worthwhile and entertaining pastime. But I don't have the budget or the time to rehash what everyone else has already said on the whole complicated backstory that you can find in 1,000 other, better produced videos. So, I want to spend the rest of this video on my own unique interpretation of FNAF, because basically everything that I haven't heard anyone else talking about is going to be here in this video. I want you to know that I've spent about 2 weeks of full-time hours working on this theory, doing research and brainstorming. So, if minimum wage in 2015 is less than my rent, and I worked on the theory 80 hours, just kidding. Here's my first clue that the whole thing's a dream. It's actually the first thing that happens in the first Five Nights at Freddy's game.
I wanted to record a message for you to help you get settled in on your first night. I actually worked in that office before you. I'm finishing up my last week now, as a matter of fact.
So he used to work here before me, and he's here now? He's actually finishing up his last shift here now, and he used to work in that office. This is not something you can make sense of. It's not logical. There's no way to make it work without stretching. And what about this? What the hell is this phone system? Is the phone guy calling me now, leaving a message? If he's calling me now and saying he's in the office now, then he is in this room with me right now. No, you say, it's pre-recorded. Okay, so he leaves a message for you during each day shift. Okay, then why does he get killed in the night 4 message, since the animatronics don't become active or threatening in the day? And how does he keep leaving these messages after he's dead? Sorry, it's just not gonna work. Let me ask you something. Have you ever heard of an answering machine that rings like somebody's calling and then plays a pre-recorded message? Like ever? Because I sure haven't. So everything that we've done, constructing timelines, speculating about metaphysics, all we've really been doing is dream interpretation. Everything that happens in these games is a dream. All speculation about the dream is dream interpretation. Face it, everything that happens in these games is a dream. All speculation about the game is dream interpretation. Face it, accept it, live in this shit. And here's why it's not bad storytelling. Here's why it's not a terrible cliche. Using the information from the dreams, which is all the information we have, we can begin to piece together a waking life reality, not shown anywhere in any of these games, but implied by every little detail in every frame of gameplay. We can speculate with pretty damn good results on who the dreamer is and what the dreams tell us about what really happened. I think this is the part of the story we haven't solved yet. So let's begin by cutting the universe in half. What is real and what is the dream? See, it's an important distinction. Do you think the world outside of the dream looks like this? Like this? Or like this? Because we're playing a video game of a dream, it's hard to say, but my intuition tells me that we should consider this a standard horror story. We can assume that the reality of the dreamer is more or less our reality. No ghosts, no weird physics, human beings act like human beings. The only part of the story that we have to accept as fictional is the existence of Freddy Fazbears Pizza, which you could argue is now actually real because these games have made it a household name, possibly more so than even the theme restaurant it's undoubtedly inspired by. So just keep the theory simple. Using Occam's razor, I'm just going to assume that the dreamer's reality is, well, real life, and the dreamer's dreams are realistically dreamlike, and I get the most logical results that way. The dreams work the way that real dreams work, and the dreams are referencing a realistic reality. Might seem like I'm getting pretty deep into epistemology here, but I assure you it's important to see the game this way in order to come to the conclusions that answer all the questions. So what do we know about dreams? Well, a psychologist will tell you that everything that happens in our dreams is a manifestation of ourselves. Every character can be seen as our own persona. Every event indicates a fear or desire or unresolved issue. So who is the phone guy? It's me. Who is the security guard? It's me. Who's in the mascot suits? It's me. Who is the killer? It's me. Who am I? This is the central question of FNAF, depicted as an endless struggle between a security guard and murderous mascots, between the mascots and the killer, between the puppet and the shadowy security guard we know as the purple guy. These are all depictions of the dreamer's dual nature. The battle being fought in the dreamer's mind is a battle between the fantasy that ghost-possessed animatronics are the killer and the reality that the dreamer is the killer. The fantasy protects the killer from his own guilt, and I think that whatever is inside the locked box at the end of the series represents the reality of waking life child murder that has been locked away forever in the killer's mind. I know that's pretty far out there, but it really does start to make sense if you see it that way. It allows you to appreciate these games on a whole new level. With that in mind, let's start constructing our map. Most theorists at this moment are proposing a model where all the dreams of all the games take place in the mind of the child from the FNAF 4 minigames. And that's fine. That could work. I would like to propose something else entirely. I think that there's a parallel timeline that takes place in reality, and that timeline influences every little detail we see in all the games. If we accept this, we can also accept that even though the games are not chronological in terms of what happens in gameplay, maybe they are chronological in the life of the dreamer. So now you have an open door to construct a new timeline for the life of the dreamer. We first meet our protagonist as a crying child in FNAF 4. Everything that happens in this story is perceived both by the child and by a child-sized Fredbear. This is where we first see the division in the protagonist's mind. He's the innocent, tormented child, but he's also the fantasy of the bear. This is our first clue that the child is mentally ill. He cries all the time. He seems to be both paranoid and delusional. The other children make fun of him. Nobody seems to be taking care of him or supervising him other than his bully brother and his imaginary Fredbear Friends toy. This is a mentally ill child, no doubt about it. The dreamer is the child, but he's also the bear, the future version of himself, watching his own memories through the mask of a delusional identity. So now we know that the dreamer is mentally ill, schizophrenic perhaps, and now we see why this makes sense. Who dreams about being crushed to death by fursuits? A psycho. Who kills children? A psycho. What kind of person kills children? The kind of person who would dream up all the things you see in these games. The kind of person who was mentally unstable to begin with, then he got picked on and teased and victimized his whole childhood, and finally, the triggering event. Having his face crushed inside a Fredbear suit is the culmination of all of his anxieties. He's fixated on a major conflict. The Fredbear characters are very popular like the Ninja Turtles were when I was a kid. Every kid is into Fredbear and Friends. Every kid wants to have his birthday at Fredbear's Family Diner. But this little disturbed kid has seen some things that are hard for him to process. He sees employees' faces in the suits. He sees the suits' exoskeletons. He sees a suit with a human head sticking out. Basically, he's starting to suspect that his pal Fredbear isn't a bear at all. He's a human being wearing Fredbear's skin. But because the child thought Fredbear was alive, he still thinks Fredbear is alive, but he also has a human being inside of him. So the only conclusion he can reach is one which his fragile, disturbed child mind can't handle. Fredbear eats people. He crushes people inside his body. And of course the event that triggers full-on mania is when the child himself is crushed inside of Fredbear's mouth, betrayed by kids wearing his friends' faces like masks. The child doesn't die though. In his obsessed mind, he becomes Fredbear. He hates people. No wonder the mascots want to crush people inside them. People suck, so he helps Fredbear. Now we come to FNAF 1. The child has grown up and become an obsessed man, assuming alter egos and working at any job that has anything to do with Fredbear and Friends characters. And in the night, on the anniversary of his birthday, he becomes Fredbear by wearing the costume, lures a set of sacrifices into a secret room, and feeds their bodies to the mascot suits. And yes, at the end of each night in FNAF 1 through 3, we hear the sound of his old grandfather clock, the family heirloom that he keeps in his home for his entire life. A daily reminder that when the dreams are over, the past is still here. That's a reasonable basis to assume that you're the same character in every game. The gameplay of FNAF 1 represents the nightmares he has before his first set of murders, a recurring nightmare in which he hears his own mysterious voice over the phone line while the mascots pursue him to stuff him inside themselves. They want him. They want him to be inside the Fredbear suit. Finally, after the 5th and even 6th night at Freddy's, or mentally insane serial killer's nightmare, he puts on the suit. He finds bodies to put inside of all the friends. The paycheck at the end of the game and the pink slip give indication that the crime wasn't worth it. He feels guilty about it, which is why he lives in denial of it and buries the reality under the delusion that the mascots are alive. Just like they're stuffing children inside of suits, he's stuffing the truth away inside his own mind. FNAF 2 is much the same, but in this one, we see the fantasy progressing and evolving and becoming meticulous in the way it all weaves together. Here, we see not only the Freddy's mascots as villains, but even the toys that other kids had. Even the other kids themselves have come to haunt him. And there's a whole new conflict going on. If you don't keep the sleepy, dreamy music going, the puppet comes out. Who the hell is this puppet who looks mysteriously like a crying child? It's me. The crying child has become nothing more than a puppet, locked away in the killer's mind while he watches his own shadow, the shadowy purple security guard, the killer, go on yet another killing spree, dismantling all the animatronics to stuff kids into them. FNAF 3 is a nightmare about the future. Maybe it really is 30 years later, or maybe Fazbear's fright is more a reflection of the dreamer's fears of how the franchise will end. Of course, a business like Fazbear's would have it stay in the sun and then crap out, especially with these murders harming their public reputation. But the killer has a lot of stake in Fazbear's. His whole existence is based around it. His nightmare is that he's still there 30 years in the future. The whole thing has become a joke with some punk kid digging up the old costumes to exploit the restaurant's tragic legacy. The dreamer is still trapped as a security guard, trapped in his obligation to Fazbear's, and this is represented by being crushed inside of a suit. This is just a nightmare. It's not real. This is the fear of being finally killed by his obsession. This is the fear that it's all going to catch up with him, the dead kids, the police, society, and they will get revenge. Or worse, they won't get revenge. It'll just go on forever, even after he dies. In his dreams, he sees himself as the security guard haunted by the ghosts of all the animatronics, and he sees himself as another version of himself, crushed inside a fursuit, wandering around like a soulless zombie killing people. Is this what he's become? And the end of the nightmare is that he burns the place down himself. He's seeing the end of his relationship with Fazbear's. He's wondering if he could possibly stand to let them go. And if we as the player become lucid in this dream and find all the clues, we manage to reconcile the crying child with the murdered children. We get the good ending. The mascots rest, the killer stops killing and quits working at Fazbear's. There's also the bad ending. That's where we choose the fantasy. We're crushed by our obligation to keep Fazbear's going. We kill again until the bitter end. FNAF 4, then, shows us both the beginning and the end. Regardless of whether we got the good ending or the bad ending for 3, we find the character here having one final series of nightmares at the end of life. Maybe the character is dying in real life, or maybe the death is just the end of the nightmares and the delusions. That's why it matters whether you complete the nights. You've got to get through it all. But not only that, if you want to know what's inside the box, you got to figure it all out too. Like we're doing here. You have to understand what the nightmare means. To win the game and open the box, you have to read between the lines. You have to play psychologist. So this is part of the game that we're doing right here. This is how you win. So what does the nightmare mean? It's a dream about ending the game. It's a dream about putting to rest the fantasy forever. In order to do that, you have to go back to the beginning and relive the horrible events that led up to your break with reality. It's either the end of the dreams or the end of your character. Either way, he has to face his worst nightmare head on, which is represented by the increasingly brutal animatronics he faces in his own home, telling him he's not even free outside of the restaurant. They're coming right into his house. This is his last stand, but against what? What's his worst nightmare? Well, it's the story of the minigames, the story of his birthday, the death of his own inner child, the birth of his serial killer alter ego, the shadowy security guard. It's the birth of his delusions of evil animatronics. That's what all the dreams are about, really. Death at a birthday party. That's the duality of the killer's mind. How would we symbolize this in a dream then? The simplest answer I can offer is that you open up a locked box and release the puppet. It's going to be the most intense jump scare in recorded history, at least for the killer. Setting the puppet free from his own evil control. Let the crying child's spirit free from your fantasy. You're the one that's haunted, not a pizza restaurant. It's you. You've been the puppet all along. All the characters have all been puppets of your own psyche because it's all a dream. If you release the puppet, the nightmares will end. But you can't change the reality that you're a real-life serial killer, believing that you've been the puppet this whole time. The truth is, you're the killer. You're the phone guy. You're the mascots. You're the purple guy. You're the crying child. Everything is you. You can't save them. You can't fix anything. Perhaps some things are best left forgotten.